I just want to say to all of you, it's an incredibly great space to be in. I can't think of a better time to talk about healing together and group therapy, like inclusive work together. As you know, IRCT stretches across the globe, and in these days, we are the kind of organization this world needs. It's delightful to know that we're going to have colleagues from the US, from Australia, from Germany, and Sweden speaking and exchanging great information, data, techniques, methodologies, probably also challenges, right, that they're facing these days. But I think in the face of a fragmentation of this world, colleagues of yours who are calling us, asking for help from Lebanon, from the US, right, from Ethiopia, from Sudan, from Gaza, continuous needs in Ukraine. You know, the list is endless. We all know that. But at the same time, and I wanted to share that with you, you know, healing together is also about celebrating when things go well. It was so nice to talk to our colleagues from the IRCT Member Center in Hungary yesterday, who talked about, you know, the results of the election, their opportunity to think hopefully toward the future. They were dancing along the Danube, the river that runs through Budapest there. And, you know, that brought me a feeling of, okay, we can do some of these things together. We shall do them together. And so therefore, I'm really pleased that such great colleagues can join us today to show the way forward. And I celebrate you, and I'm glad that you prioritize these meetings. So thanks for the space, for the introduction, and you know, hopefully you'll take what you learned with you. You have a responsibility to take it back into your organizations, spread the word to others, and try and implement some of these changes and ideas and modalities that you hear about today. Thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you, Lisa. Those were very good opening remarks, and I think also full of you know, the motivation we need nowadays to keep united in this. So I will start introducing the panelists of today. Again, remember that today's format is going back to this old format of each one presents, and then we have some space for a short Q&A after each presentation. So we will follow that format today. So make sure you keep the questions towards the end of the presentation. And I will introduce the panelists of today, whom, I mean, I would like to thank in advance for their time and willingness to participate and share here with all of us. So the first participant is, the first panelist, sorry, is Alexandra Lidl. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, not like the supermarket. And she's a psychologist, psychological psychotherapist, sorry, and the therapeutic director at Centra Hamburg, is the center in Hamburg, Germany. The second speaker is Georgina Warner. She's a clinical psychologist and associate professor at Uppsala University in Sweden. Then we have the Kovler Center colleagues, Martin Songa, she's clinical mental health practitioner, and Marielle Lifshitz, she's mental health counselor at Survivors of Torture program at the Heart Alliance International / Marjorie Kovler Center in the US. And last speaker is Johanna Najmi. He's a senior clinical group counselor at STARS Australia, and he's also a multidisciplinary artist and playfield therapist. So without any further ado, I will give the floor to Alexandra. If you want to go ahead and share your screen. There you go.
Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you so much also for the opportunity to speak here. It's the first time for me to share this meeting, and I'm really overwhelmed of this group. And it's an honor for me to present you today a manual we developed at Refugium Munich. It's in the south of Germany, where I worked before. I worked here at Centra. And we developed a group manual for a skills training of affect regulation, and we tried to do it cultural sensitive. So what I would like to present in the next few minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, is first of all a short theory of emotion regulation and trauma, how we do it also in the group. So how we try to show our participant the connection between emotion regulation and traumatic experiences they had in the past. And then a short overview of the Stark manual. The reason why we developed this manual is because we got many feedbacks of our clients who told us they have problems in emotion regulation. Most of you will have the same experience. And I just highlighted one of the quotes from initial consultations. And this is the reason why we thought it's also good to do it in a group format and to focus on the special needs of refugees. And it's the quote I just marked here: everything is different here in Germany. Where I come from, conflicts are intense, but they are also over quickly. Here, people kill with words and not with action, and the consequences of conflicts can be felt forever. The problem in this aspect was that the client has, because of his difficulties in emotion regulation, also consequences in his asylum process, and that's why he named it like that. Just that we are all on the same level. A brief definition of emotion regulation. So it's the process by which individuals influence the experience, the intensity, duration, timing, and expression of activated emotions. So just that we are all into this aspect. And as I've said, I would like to explain the connection between emotion regulation and traumatized patients, as all participants in our group are. They are torture survivors, traumatized refugees, and most of them have the feeling they just can't control their emotions, and it comes from 0 to 100. And with this glass metaphor, we try to explain them what's going on. And this is also an example that you get a short idea how we work in this group, because we use lots of metaphors, and to try with these metaphors, we try to show or to explain what's going on. And I would just show it to you in the same way we do it in the group, because at the beginning we always ask, okay, how was the last week? What's going on? And then we use for this metaphor an example of one of the participants. And I just call the participant Javed. He mentioned in this first round that there was an incident at school, a conflict at the playground, and then he beat it up with another student, and there was a big conflict. And then we asked, okay, can we use this example to illustrate what happened? And he said, well, of course, it's good also for me to understand it in a better way. So, and here you can see we have a cup, and we ask Javed, here you can see the cup and the level of water we put into this cup. It indicates how stressed you are, how high is your tension. So can you just say, what would you say, what is your level, your stress level in general? And what almost always happens is that participants, they fulfill the glass halfway. So the stress is already in general very high. And then we say, okay, then let's go to the situation that happened last week at school. But we do not start with the situation. We start earlier. Perhaps you can say, how did you sleep the night before? So how was this night? And he told us then, well, the night was not good. I had trouble falling asleep. I had nightmares, as almost every night. So it was not a good night. So that means that this stress and tension level gets even higher. Okay, so we have more water coming into it. Then we say, okay, then what happens then? What happens at the next morning? And And he said, okay, I overslept. I had slept so poorly during the night, then I overslept. I didn't hear the alarm clock. And then when I woke up, I should have already been on my way to school. That means the water gets even higher. What happened next, we asked. And he said, well, I hurried as fast as I could to get to school on time. But then I was just pulling, the bus was just pulling away when I ran to the bus stop station. The stress level even is higher. And I mean, what you can see, and what is for most of our participants something new, is that he's not at school at all, but the water in this cup is almost on the top. So we asked further, okay, what happened then? He said, I was at school and the teacher asked me in front of the whole class why I was late. I forgot my notebook at home. And then, okay, the glass here, the tension and stress level is even higher. It's getting fuller. And what happened next? Then he said, okay, we had the break. Then a classmate pumped into me more water into the glass, and then he is on the playground. And then there was the last thing that happened. There was a student from the other class, and he said something bad about Afghanistan, the country where the participant came from. And then he said, well, and then I just lost my control and it overlapped. And I hope you can see that. The glass is overflowing. And with this metaphor, we try to make sure that it's not from 0 to 100. There are single steps that have to come together, that the glass really overflows. And the question then we ask is, okay, what can we do that not only water comes into the glass, but also that it flows out? So what ideas do you have? And we discuss it into the group. And what we want to tell them is that we need like drains. I hope you can see that as well. Water comes out of the glass here. And this is exactly what we try to train into the group, that we have more drains into this glass, and that we learn into the group how we can flow out and what we can do, that not only water comes from the top, but also it goes out from the glass. So this is a little bit the intention of our group manual. And I just show you shortly what is the background. We know from traumatized patients that they have very intense feelings. They are triggered more easily. So that means that the level is very high. They have problems to reduce the water level. So they have just few strategies to reduce them. And they have an undifferentiated emotional experience. So they do not know how high is the water level. And that's exactly what we try to focus in this group session. Here you can see the manual. Unfortunately, it's published only in German. But if you're interested, we have some download material on this website, and it's also in other languages as well. I just show you what are the topics of this of the sessions. First of all, we focus on the emotional awareness. We try to train it to make sure what are emotions, how do thoughts, body reactions also influence emotions. Then we talk about specific possibilities to deal with emotional regulation. And then we also speak about specific emotions. And to give you perhaps another overview of our settings, this is a little bit deeper how we use the different sessions. So as you can see, we try to really focus on how can they understand emotions, how can they deal with anger, sadness, and fear. And our experience is it is so helpful to discuss it into a group, because almost all participants have the same experience. They have lots of fear, they have lots of anger in their daily life, and the problem is how to deal with it. And the problem is not only how to deal with these intense emotions, but also in the situation as refugees with lots of post-migration stressors. And therefore, it's so good to have this exchange in the group. And one last thing I would like to show you to make you just to give you an impression how we try also to explain what happened. We show a video right at the beginning. So it's the first session. We show this video to show what happens if your emotions get under or you lose control over your emotions. And it's not so important that you understand what they say. I just want you to see this video. It's only about 2 minutes. Okay, so what you can see here, and we thought it's a very good scene that we used this Zidane video. Most of you will know Zidane. He is a very well-known and successful French soccer player, and this is one of his most important games, the World Cup final. And what happened is that France was leading against Italy, and then this happened. This head button, and then he had to leave the play, and Italy was then the winner of the game. The reason why we found this scene so fitting is that it shows different stages before the situation is finally escalating, and that's the same for all participants and for all people who really have problems in emotion regulation. There are different stages, and when we can see and show this is something that everybody knows, and this is also our take-home message. So it is like we all get angry, we all have strong feelings, even Zidane, and that's okay. Important how we deal with it, and we would like to learn is together in the group that we do not get the red card, because it's even for refugees, it's more difficult if they get in this situation. Okay, I just show you a feedback of our pilot study when we asked how was the group for you, how did you benefit from the group, and I highlighted the thing that this feedback they got us about the group, and they said the best thing about the group was that we worked together and we found together a solution. So we discussed the issue and everyone gave their opinion. We gathered all the ideas and came up with a good solution, and that's also what we took home then and benefited from it. So for me, this is really, I think, the best thing working in a group, that we have lots of experts in this room, and we are more or less only the moderators. But all the others give their expertise, or the participants give their expertise, and all of them have this experience with emotion regulation problems. Perhaps the last thing, we also did a randomized controlled pilot study to see does it really work. So what benefit do we have? We have quite good results. I can show it here. So we have effect stables for difficulty in emotion regulation and also in transdiagnostic symptoms. And it was stable over 3 months. However, what I would also like to tell you, and these are my last words, we also had moderator effects. And we saw that the treatment was, or those participants had a higher benefit if they were higher educated. So that was something we wanted to minimize. That's also why we wanted to do it more in a better way. But we found that. And the other thing, what we also found is that in welfare institutions, that means participants there had a very better and more individualized care and help in their daily life. They also had a higher benefit. So that's something we also can discuss. But with this, I end also my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Really nice presentation, and also with the glass metaphor. Now, questions or comments from the audience, if there are any, to Alexandra before we move on to the next speaker. No questions, comments?
Moi, j'aurais une question, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, allez-vous. Allez-y. And the other ones you can connect
Alors,
to the
bonjour à
English
tous,
channel.
je suis Oula Kapaye. Je suis deuxième vice-président de la Confédération des organisations de victimes des crises ivoiriennes. Et je vis en France depuis quelques années. Alors, je remercie l'intervenant de tout à l'heure pour cet exposé. C'était un exposé très intéressant. Et la régulation des émotions est une thématique qui nous intéresse vraiment en Côte d'Ivoire. Parce que après tous les préjudices subis par les victimes, en fait, en Côte d'Ivoire, après tous les préjudices qui ont produit des victimes en Côte d'Ivoire, beaucoup d'efforts ont été faits pour la restauration de la dignité des victimes. Mais à côté, il reste encore beaucoup à faire. Entre autres, la reconnaissance même des préjudices subis par les victimes. Alors, on a l'impression qu'on a, ou ce qu'on vit, c'est que les préjudices qui ont été subis ne sont pas reconnus véritablement par l'État. Alors, la question que je voudrais poser, c'est est-ce que avant de poser la question, je voudrais présenter les conséquences donc de ce sentiment qui habite les victimes. Comme elles ont le sentiment que leurs préjudices ne sont pas reconnus, alors quand nous faisons nos tournées, il y a certaines victimes qui ne sont pas prêtes à pardonner ce qu'elles ont subi. Elles ne sont pas prêtes à pardonner aux perpétrateurs et donc mijotent leur vengeance aussi. Alors, donc, la question que je voudrais poser, est-ce que la régulation des émotions, telle que présentée par la dame de tout à l'heure, pourrait être favorisée par la reconnaissance du préjudice qu'a subi la victime? Est-ce que le fait que l'auteur ou le perpétrateur ou une autre entité exprime vraiment reconnaisse que la victime a vraiment subi ce qu'elle a subi, est-ce que ça peut aider à réguler les émotions de la victime? Voici la question que je voudrais poser.
Merci, Kvap. Ola. Alexandra, did you get the question? Did you get the translation?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
No. Okay. Well, he was. I'll try to make it very short. He was explaining how some victims have a hard time to forgive. So I guess the question is whether this emotional regulation is a way to, he said, recognize the prejudice. But I understand if it's a way to work around this forgiving aspect from the victim.
So to be honest, I don't think that with our concept, we do not focus at all on forgiveness. So I know that we had a very big study about forgiveness and reconciliation when I worked in Berlin at the Treatment Center for Torture Victims. And from my experience there, I think there is something else necessary to really focus on the aspect of forgiveness and reconciliation. The thing we are focused on in our group manual is more about how to deal with these daily emotions of anger, of sadness, and I mean, and of course, you are right that the aspect of feeling anger and sadness also have a consequence, of course, of this, how I deal with patients. And if I have the possibility to forgive, then it would help me. But to be honest, I think they need something else than this concept. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting part, but or at least I think it would be necessary to have enough time then also within this very structured manual we've developed to have time and sessions, not only one, but more sessions to have space and place also to discuss it with all the others. But would be a very good additional part.
Thank you,
Thanks
Alexandra.
for this. Yes.
And very good question, I think. We also have Simone on the chat asking whether you plan more studies and whether you could share the link to access the study. But maybe I can ask you, Alexandra, to write it in the chat directly as we move to Georgina. Thanks again, Alexandra, for this excellent presentation. So we're now going to move to Georgina Warner. She's a clinical psychologist and associate professor at Uppsala University in Sweden. And I can see she's already ahead with sharing screen. So Georgina, the floor is yours. Yeah, you can. Now it's perfect. Now it's full screen.
And you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep, good. Thank you, Berta. So yes, as you said, I'm an associate professor working at Uppsala University in Sweden. I'm not actually clinically trained. Sorry, Berta, I should have caught that in our email correspondence.
Oh.
I'm not a clinical psychologist, but we did have clinical psychologists on the team. But I just think it's good for you to know in terms of the types of questions I'll be able to respond to today. So I was very much leading the research aspect. Yes, so the project that I'm going to be talking about today is about group-based STARE, which stands for Skills Training in Effective and Interpersonal Regulation. A bit of an overlap with the intervention that's just been presented. And this is, I'm going to be talking about a very small scale pilot study with refugee victim survivors of domestic violence residing here in Sweden. So I just wanted to start by setting the scene. So each year, an estimated 800,000 women in Sweden experience domestic violence and abuse. That's nearly 1 in every 6 women that you might pass on the street. Refugee women face heightened vulnerability and barriers to accessing help here in Sweden, including the legal precarity of their situation, financial hardship, and a lack of information about the services that are available, as well as discrimination. So together with a close colleague of mine, my former PhD student who's just defended, so now postdoctoral researcher, she's been leading on this project where together with refugee survivors of gender-based violence, so some have experienced domestic violence and abuse, but others have experienced other forms of gender-based violence, we co-designed a new intervention model. So I wanted to speak briefly about the co-design process, but then I'm going to move on to the STARE aspect. And I'm going to go through this very quickly, but you'll see there is a QR code to the published paper if you're interested in reading a bit more about this. So there were 2 different phases in the co-design process. First of all, we had to really understand and define the situation that we were working with. And then we moved on to creating ideas, and now we're testing the ideas. So this process started years ago now with monthly meetings together with the survivors, the women who are public contributors in this research study. And this was really to understand the key issues from their perspective and to work together to think which services or organizations in Swedish society do we want to invite into this process. So once we decided that, we had specific workshops with each organization, and we were really trying to understand what's the current service provision, and also how are these services and organizations relating to each other, because that could be something that we could help to improve, perhaps communication between existing services, for example. And just to say those services, it was very broad. So the one I'm going to be talking a lot about today is the Swedish Red Cross, who's been a very important collaborator in this project. But we also were speaking with Swedish for immigrant language teachers, the civic orientation teachers, health clinics. And so it was a very broad range of services. So we, after each workshop, we had the ideas that were created were kind of summarized and shared with everyone. And then we all came together, all of the services and our survivor collaborators. We came together in one room and we had a big logic model template on the wall. And we started thinking together about what we could change, which it was important for us to think what's in our control, those of us in the room, what can we commit to changing, and how might this theoretically make a positive difference for this group of society. And then this led to, of course, we had many notes. We had to go back and kind of refine and think about what is it that we're really going to do here. And we came up with a very kind of streamlined version, which you see on the screen now. And we saw two key areas where we needed to develop the service provision in Sweden. So at the base, we needed a community-based help-seeking initiative where safe spaces were created to have discussions about what is violence, and if someone is experiencing violence, where can they seek help? Not just for those who are experiencing violence directly, but as a public health initiative, because perhaps people who attend those sessions, they can then be well equipped to support their friend or their neighbor or someone else in the community that they've become aware is experiencing violence. So through this, I'm not going to talk so much about this today, but just so you know, this is being done together with our local municipality, so the area in which my university is situated, and we're working with the open preschool, and we're using what's called picture vignettes to start discussions, and these are in a group-based format. And then the idea is that participants can talk about the characters in the pictures, so there's no need to disclose or speak about personal experiences. They can then project onto the images. I think she's experiencing this. Where could she get help, for example? And this is being done together with NCK. So NCK is a national knowledge centre for men's violence against women in Sweden, and it's based here at Uppsala University. And they've been supporting the open preschool staff with some training for this initiative. So what I am going to talk more about today is the top of the triangle, which is group psychosocial support. So what we found through our co-design process was that even in the cases of where women do know where to seek help and they manage to find their way to the service may not actually be very prepared to receive them. So we thought that there was a gap in what was being provided at the clinical level to this group. And the Swedish Red Cross committed to supporting us in changing this, and they were very open to trialing a new intervention in one of their clinics. And so we went through a process of deciding what should be piloted. And we did this through a scoping review, which has very recently been published. So you can go have a look through this. And the group aspect very much came from our survivor collaborators. So the public contributors in this process, they really felt that it was important to meet other women who have had similar experiences and to have that social aspect to the support being received in the clinical setting. So if you look through the scoping review, we had a fairly broad criteria to get studies in, but then we were looking at examples that had been delivered in a group format with the target group, or they may have been delivered. There are examples in our scoping review, including STARE, that we ended up selecting, that in our scoping review were delivered individually, but we knew from the wider literature that it was possible to deliver them in a group format, and that had been done and tested before. Maybe not with our target group, but more broadly. So that's how we landed on STARE. And this was a clinical initiative. So the Swedish Red Cross got started and they delivered a group. And then we, as slow academics, we caught up and got our ethical permission. And then we followed one group. So this was the first group in the study was actually the second group being delivered by the clinic. And this was 6 women that decided to take part in the study. And we wanted to take a mixed method approach. So in terms of quantitative measures, we utilized a questionnaire that's routinely administered in the clinic, which is measuring symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. That's called the PCL-5. And so we had that before and after the women took part in the intervention, which was delivered over 8 weeks. And then we also asked the women taking part to fill out a weekly survey, which was just 7 items, and this was focused on their personal well-being. So you'll see on the screen here, it had an item on their standard of living, their personal health, achieving in life, personal relationships, how safe you feel, community connectedness, and future security. So we wanted to monitor if and how that changed over the weeks. Also, we asked at this weekly data collection moment for them to free write in what we're calling a journal, just their thoughts on how was the session, how are they feeling. So they did that on a weekly basis as well. And then at the end of the intervention, my colleague went to interview them. So we have some qualitative interviews at the end of the process. So on to our results. So because we had such a small group, we were looking at individual level change, and we used something called a reliable change index. So it meant that we're looking at symptom changes on the individual basis. And for the PCL-5, there are these kind of bigger studies showing what change you might just expect, just kind of normal variation, and what might be clinically meaningful. So we found that 2 of the 6 women had a clinically meaningful decrease in symptoms. So that's an improvement. And while that might feel a bit underwhelming, 2 out of 6, it's important to say here that STARE is not actually targeting PTSD symptoms. It's working on emotions, and it's working on relationship patterns. And so this is something that this was like an additional benefit that we saw from previous literature can happen when people take part in STARE. In terms of well-being, we didn't see any overall trends that we could map across participants, but for some individuals we did see fluctuations which we think held some meaning. I'm going to give a couple of examples on the next slide. And then in terms of how the participants experienced the intervention, there were 3 different themes, which again I'm going to go through. So just very quickly, you can see here the different 2 of the different well-being items. So I wanted to, the reason I'm showing this first one on how safe you feel, if you see woman number 6, woman the orange woman that's got a lot of sixes in her responses, you can see that from the first two baseline measurements down to the first session, you see a drop in how safe she feels. And our understanding of this from the other data as well might be because of entering the group situation, that initial stepping into a group of people that you don't know to work with these difficult topics can affect your feeling of personal safety, but then you see that it recovers to the previous level. And future security, you can see the blue participant, how it started very low and then went high. We don't know through this design if this was to do with the intervention itself. This could have been a shift in the other life circumstances of the woman, but it's just very interesting that for that participant, we saw that big improvement in terms of future security. So I think I'm a bit short on time, but I just really want to get the women's voices into the room. So I'm just going to go through a couple of quotes. So first of all, the women talked about the intervention itself and how they walked away with many very tangible strategies for creating what they describe as inner calm. So this woman, participant number 6, she says, "To find the calm in me was very important to learn, and that as soon as it gets stressful or a difficult situation, you can take deep breaths. I could use it in practice, and somehow I could come in close contact with myself." Another theme that emerged across the participants was what we've termed insights on self-worth. So they talked about learning how they should feel about themselves and caring for themselves. That was something that came out of the interviews. Something that I think is important for the topic of this webinar was how they expressed being in a group. So they talked about the relief of sharing. So this woman talked about everyone having their own personal experiences, and also the teachers, the importance of the teachers giving guidance. This wasn't all good. So something that came out was about how much they were allowed to share. So this woman, she says, the group leaders stopped it. They said, "That's enough." They don't allow it. She, another participant, wanted to tell a bit more, but no, they said no, stop, and things like that. For time, I'm going to move forward, but I'm very happy to share the slides with these quotes. So just to go through the implications, we felt that the intervention was very positively received and had a lot of perceived value from the women who took part. There was some feedback on feeling like there wasn't enough time, both within the individual sessions, but also across how many weeks. So the advice that's gone back to the clinic and they're implementing now is to have slightly longer sessions. And the idea is to deliver over 12 weeks rather than 8, which is within the STAIR manual that it can be between these timeframes. We think there were some important messages there about trauma-focused facilitation. There was a reason why the facilitators were stopping the women from sharing too much because of managing secondary trauma risk. But we felt like that perhaps the lesson to take forward is to explain this process very clearly at the beginning, that they may stop people, and this is why they're stopping people, just to make it a bit clearer to those women taking part why this might be happening. There were some important lessons about group composition. So one of the women, she felt like she didn't share the same background or experiences as the other women. And she also spoke about not understanding some of the terminology and some of the concepts and the tasks that they were doing in the room. So we felt like if it were possible to put together groups based on a shared history, that might actually make the women feel more part of the group. But of course, we recognize that's not always possible in the clinical setting. And then something for future research, which we're actually just starting now, is to do this with a longer follow-up. So we were only interviewing immediately after the intervention. We would like to see how the women talk about the experience after a longer time. And also thinking about the sequencing, because some women had individual therapy before, and some were scheduled to get individual therapy afterwards. And we'd really like to see whether the sequence of receiving STAIR before is good for stabilizing, or is it something that should come after the women have had individual therapy. So that's something that we're looking into now. So of course, I didn't do this all by myself. So I really want to recognize my colleague, Anna, who I mentioned earlier. So she's just completed her PhD in this project. Eliza, who is a trainee psychologist at the time. So she continues to work with the Swedish Red Cross. And Frida, who I think is with us today, was the collaborator on this project as well. And of course, a special thank you to our survivor co-researchers.
Thank you so much, Georgina, for this wonderful presentation. So now we have space for a couple of questions from the audience. If there's any, I see a lot of clapping, which is an indicator of a good presentation. We have a handout from Edwidge. Edwidge, est-ce que vous voulez partager? And one hand from Carmen. So Carmen, primero vamos a Edwidge y luego Edwidge, vous.
Ok, merci Beta, merci à toutes les présentatrices. Mais ma question était plutôt adressée à Alexandra de Saint-Hambourg. Je ne sais pas si c'est possible de poser la question.
Oui, c'est possible, Edwidge.
Ok, c'est bon. Bon, ma question, c'était relatif à ce qu'elle a dit au niveau de la gestion des émotions. Voilà, comment gérer les émotions. Bon, je m'attendais un peu à 2 ou 3 petites astuces pour faire face au stress, à l'émotion. Parce que souvent on entend, il faut gérer tes émotions, essaie de te calmer. Mais quels sont les types qu'elle peut donner? Par exemple, quelques astuces qu'elle peut donner pour pouvoir gérer, pour pouvoir maîtriser ces émotions-là lorsqu'on les ressent. Parce que ce n'est pas toujours évident. Voilà, merci.
Thank you, Edwidge. So this question was for Alexandra, actually. I don't know if you got the question. I can translate otherwise.
Now I use the translator. Thanks a lot.
Perfect.
To be honest, that's a big question. And this is part of the whole training. And I think so what we do, perhaps to give you some insights, what we do is, of course, we do relaxation techniques. We use typical DBT techniques as well. But for us, it's also so important that participants, first of all, understand how their emotions grow, or how are the steps from I feel stressed until my emotions overwhelmed me, and therefore we took a lot of time to really understand this process, and to make sure it's so important that we do not act when the emotions overwhelmed us, but we do have to react in an earlier stage. So what we try the message we try to give always is that when we use the lights from the traffic lights, so when you are in the green light, then everything is okay. Orange would be I feel stressed, I feel a little bit more tension, and red is like this, as Zidane he had it with this head boom, or however you call it. And we say the important red is not the important light is not the red one, but the orange one. So if you have specific body reactions, if you have specific thoughts in your mind, and that's so about all these things, we talk in the group, and we really have time to talk about that for 14 sessions and even more. So it's a little bit difficult to answer this in 1 or 2 minutes, as we also do not have so much time for everything. But this is our, I would say, our main message of the training. It's so important to recognize when am I on the orange light, and then I have to react, because the red light, then it's too late. So I can't do PMR, intense breathing, when I'm on the red light. So when I'm really overwhelmed from my emotions, I have to react much, much earlier. And within the process of our group training, we really try to focus on that. So how can I recognize that my body gets more tension? So all these things, yeah, or I have specific thoughts in my mind. And then we say it's also so necessary to use these relaxation techniques daily, every day, not only when I feel stressed. But as I show you this glass metaphor and drains that keep the water out of the cup, so you have to use it really daily, and that's what we try to explain within the training. And not only explain, but we do it. We induce emotions. We feel these emotions in the group together. We deal with the emotions within the group. I hope that was helpful, but it was really, yeah.
Thank you, Alexandra. Yeah, at least you do your best to respond with your experience. Yes. We also have a question from Carmen.
Yes, thank you. And Berta, can I make a super quick comment about emotions? And probably you all know this poem, but I teach classes here, and with emotions, I love to share the poem The Guest House by Rumi, that probably you all know, which is such a sweet invitation I feel about emotions as messengers. And can we come to listen to what the message underneath the emotion is? So I think that's a beautiful way to relate to emotions, not so much about positive and negative emotions, but really, what is this emotion? What is the message here? And John Kabat-Zinn here used to say that sometimes we try to kill the messenger before we really listen. What's the message? So I found that analogy with the guest house and the emotions visiting so beautiful, and really embracing of all the emotions that we may experience. But the question was for both of you, really, but I'm wondering, Georgina and Alexandra, what is the role of the physical body, of maybe movement, when we talk about emotions, or when we talk about healing from trauma? Do you bring that into your groups? Thank you.
Good question. So for STAIR, yes, one of the early sessions, so it starts with emotional awareness, and then it moves on to feeling emotions in the body. So there's a bodily awareness aspect to STAIR, not so much the kind of therapeutic aspect that you were saying about movement. And I'm not sure that the skills are very heavy on that aspect, but certainly the body is brought into the discussion and the emotional awareness aspect. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. There's another question from our colleague at GN Foundation. You can go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Walter. Hello.
Thank you for IRCT for letting me to be a part of this meeting. And so thank you for both of our panelists, Alexandra and Georgina. I really appreciated your kind information, kind knowledge. My name is Bakar. I'm from Kurdistan of Iraq. I'm a psychotherapist in GN Foundation. It is quite interesting when we're talking about this topic. I'm working in a refugee camp. So nowadays, refugee camp, they are coming from Syria in 2014 when ISIS came to Syria and north of Iraq. So the problem here nowadays, we have many women clients they are suffering from domestic violence. And the problem is when we start to open a file and make an assertion, we cannot find any kind of social support or family, let's say family support. You know, the most of them, they are tortured, not tortured, but physically, emotionally harassment by his husband or some man relative from this family. And they said we cannot manage our life if we divorce from this man. And in this situation, we face many challenges regarding to support these women. And the question is, could we support them without getting family support when the woman, there is no any income, there is no any legal or any services outside the camp. So if there is any way we can get benefit from your studies to support them, this is my question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So it's hard for me to understand the complexity of the context you're working in, but what I can reflect from our research is that we are open to working with women with ongoing violence, and that leaving the perpetrator isn't always the safest thing to do, or what the women are choosing to do. So the idea with an intervention like STARE is that it can still support the women even if the violence is ongoing. Something that I think is very important to note that I didn't say during the presentation was that the Swedish Red Cross, the clinic where this was tested, they formed a collaboration with a local social service organization to enable some safety planning as well, because that's of course an important aspect. And from the research perspective, we were careful to ensure that no communications went home, and that any research activity could take place at the Red Cross Centre, that it didn't need to take place in the home environment in case there was ongoing violence and participation in the study might trigger. So yeah, that's my reflection, that it doesn't always have to be that the woman is wanting or able to leave the ongoing violent situation, but that doesn't mean that support can't start if it's something like STARE.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Georgina. And and colleagues for posing these questions. I can see there are some questions waiting in line and both in the chat, but I'm going to ask you to please keep them towards the end, because we're still going to have one more presentation from Martin and Marielle. So I'm going to give the floor to Martin and Marielle now for their presentation. Be aware that the last speaker, Johanna, could not join, so we're good on time in that sense. And yes, so as I mentioned earlier, Martin, she's a clinical mental health practitioner, and Marielle, she's mental health counselor. They're both at Survivors of Torture program at Heartland Alliance International, or Marjorie Kobler Center in the US. So the floor is yours, Martin and Marielle. Oh, Martin, you need to unmute your microphone. There you go.
Thank you, Berta, and thank you for the opportunity. We are excited. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone around the globe. Marielle and I will be presenting on group interventions at our organization, the Marjorie Kobler Center. We will share our group interventions and how we support our clients' healing process. Why group intervention at our organization? The Kovler Center has a long history of using group-based interventions over many years because it has shown to be highly beneficial for our clients. Group therapy directly addresses the major impacts of trauma, isolation. Group helps to rebuild trust, create connection, and allow clients to feel support from others who share similar experiences. Over time, we see that healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens through shared experience and connection. Currently, we facilitate 2 groups in French, the psychosocial support group and the stress management group. Today, we will focus on our stress management group. Why this group? And what is so innovative about our approach? In the context of this gathering, we define innovation not as something new or experimental, but as an approach that is responsive, effective, and grounded in what actually works for our clients. Our stress management group is unique because it integrates structure, safety, is culturally responsive in its delivery, and practical interventions. What makes our group effective? Our approach, I believe we are on slide 3. Our approach is grounded in work of Irvin Yalom, whose therapeutic factors explain why group therapy is so powerful. First, there is the factor of universality, that moment when a client realizes, I am not alone. For survivors of trauma and torture, that realization can significantly reduce isolation and shame. Over time, the group becomes a safe, protective space, and which many clients describe as feeling like a family. There is also interpersonal learning. Clients learn from one another, share experiences, and practice new skills in real time, which makes them more meaningful and easier to apply outside the group. Now, more importantly, hope begins to grow. When clients see others coping and adapting, it reinforces the belief that recovery is possible. Slide number 4. Group goals. For survivors of torture, especially the clients we work with, innovation often means moving away from deep trauma processing towards stabilizing in the present and building practical skills. Our group prioritizes safety, regulation, and connection, and meeting clients where they are, especially during periods of legal uncertainty and instability. We also emphasize relaxation through grounding and body-based techniques. More importantly, groups help reduce isolation and serve as a supportive bridge for clients who are awaiting legal outcomes, family reunification, or individual therapy. Groups also serve as a bridge of support for clients who may not yet be ready or able to engage in individual therapy. This approach is innovative, not because of any single technique, but because its interventions are structured, repeatable, culturally adaptable, and ready for immediate use. Now, I would like to invite Marielle to walk us through how our innovation comes to life through our group structure and intervention.
Thank you, Martine, and hello, everyone. As has been said before, I'm a mental health counselor at the Marjorie Kovler Center in Chicago, and I co-facilitate the stress reduction group with Martine. And because we don't have a lot of time, I just want to give highlights. So we've run this stress reduction group 3 times. We're currently finishing the 3rd group. We started doing it with 6 sessions, but now feel that it makes more sense with 8 sessions over 8 weeks. It's a closed group when we've invited on average 8 participants to each group. And we've definitely noticed attrition. And after the first session, not all participants will show up for following sessions. We've done this group now only in French. The Marjorie Kovler Center has many French-speaking participants, and we feel that it has been a plus to be able to offer this group in French. The first time we did this group, we did it in person, but because it's a stress reduction group, and it was stressful for participants to come to the center, we've done the last 2 groups by video and feel that it has worked by video too. The focus is on current stress, not on the past, although we do acknowledge in the first session that every participant has gone through terrible things, but the focus on this group is to try and manage and reduce current stress. We introduced interventions for 7 of the 8 sessions of the group. In the last session, participants choose from prior interventions what they want to focus the termination session on. But so that at the end of the group, if a participant has gone to all sessions, they will have 14 tools that they can use to reduce the stress. There's 1 intervention each week that's more structured, and we finish each session with a grounding and mindfulness activity. Each session, we ask participants to share how their week went, what stressed them, and what tools they used to manage the stress, and whether the tools worked or not, hoping that if a tool works really well, other participants might be more inclined to try to use the tools that they've learned. And then what we're really excited about is that we ask participants every week to report on the levels of stress in the past week on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the highest. And what we've seen is participants coming in the first session with levels of stress of between 8 and 10 out of 10, and then consistently ending the groups with a level of between 2 and 4 out of 10 of stress. And of course, there are outliers, but for participants who attended at least 3 of the sessions in the group, we are seeing this consistent, very strong reduction of stress levels. And so here's a sample of interventions that we've used. On the left-hand side, you have the more structured interventions, and on the right-hand side, the more grounding and mindfulness-based interventions. You've noticed that there's only 6 of each listed. The group is pretty flexible. Martine and I discuss what interventions to do on a weekly basis, and this allows us to move things around, to introduce other interventions based on the needs we might see in the participants. The only one of the interventions I want to focus on is the worry box, and that's an intervention that we do at the beginning of each group, and it has shown to be one of the more useful tools for the participants. And so Edwige, hearing wanting to know specific things. We explain the worry box as not getting rid of worries, but with the idea that our mind likes to store things and to file things, and that things that don't have solutions, we tend to ruminate on them. And as a group, each participant creates their own worry box with the idea that the more texture we can give, the more that they can find it afterwards. And the goal is to use the worry box when you're ruminating, before going to sleep, if you have, excuse me, these ideas that keep on floating. And in an interesting way, the worry box is the tool that the participants have been using the most, and that they say is one of the more impactful. So we use it in the first session with the idea that if something works, then participants will probably be more likely to try the other interventions. And because we don't have a lot of time, rather than going into the other specific interventions, but I do have to say I am excited about those two, I want to point out 3 things about how we've thought about this group. First, as we've said, every week we share 2 tools, but this is so that each session can be seen as a standalone session. We understand that the participants have many things going on in their lives, and maybe they'll only be able to attend 1 session. And so the point is that even if they attend only 1, they will come away with 2 tools that they can use that hopefully will be able to help them manage their stress. The second thing I'd like to point out is psychoeducation. And for the more structured interventions, each session, the facilities explain why the intervention works and the research behind it. And we're very aware of power dynamics that can occur between the therapists and the participants. And we want to share knowledge and empower the participants. And we have seen participants explain to another participant who maybe wasn't there at a prior session, one of the interventions, and the participants will, in their explanation, use the research and say how it works. The third thing I want to point out is that we add what I like to call extra emotional holding. So for example, when we send text reminders to each participant, we'll put it in their specific name, and we might put in a note about something that they talked about that was happening to them. And when we do the resiliency suitcase, which is one of the interventions, the facilitators will point out specific qualities that we've noticed in the participant and maybe tie it back to a story that they shared. And this is for these participants to feel seen and held and valued. Oftentimes, this is the beginning of their relationship with the Marjorie Kovler Center. And we feel that this extra holding is very valuable. We're trying to get feedback from the participants on this group through a outcome and satisfaction survey at the end of each group. So we've done it twice, and we'll do it when we finish this new group at the end of next week. And originally it was done on paper. Now we're doing it electronically so that participants can answer the survey from their phone. And hopefully we'll be able to collect data to make the group better and to help us understand why it works. And now back to you, Martine.
Thank you, Marielle. Brilliant. Now, I would like to share a few reflections from our clients in their own words. A client offered, "At first, I didn't believe in the group. By the second session, I realized I wasn't the only one suffering from trauma. Sharing with others is relieving and helps reduce my stress." Another one shared, "I have difficulty getting close to people, but in this group, I feel like I am with family, and that feels very good." Another one said, "I had beautiful moments in this group. It's helped me so much. Knowing that we can count on others makes a big difference." Another, "This group is important because I feel part of a community. I feel relieved knowing I'm not alone." Another one, "This group gives me confidence and courage for what I cannot control. I trust that God is in charge." and so on. So I can go through the list because of time constraint. So what you have hearing in these client voices is what makes this approach different. Not just in what we do as clinicians, but in what clients experience and carry with them outside the group. It is not just about reducing symptoms. It is about rebuilding connection, dignity, and a sense of control. And that impact doesn't stop when the group ends. Clients live with a stronger sense of self-confidence, belonging, and trust, things trauma often takes away. And they carry that into their everyday lives. So, best practice and challenges. So what have we learned from our work? Overall, we see meaningful positive outcomes. Clients report reduced stress and increased confidence in their ability to cope. But what is especially important is that the group impact is not always visible. For example, we had a client who attended regularly, but rarely spoke during sessions. And yet later, he shared that he felt like family in the group, and that experience made him feel stronger. This reminded us that healing doesn't always look the way we expect. At the same time, we attempted to help our clients with their problem and adjustments. We always sometimes face challenges, such as engagement, attrition, technology barriers, and language access. And this is where innovation continues. It means not only recognizing what works, but also adapting to what doesn't. For us, one important question moving forward is, how can we expand access while maintaining safety and cohesion? At Kovler, we serve clients from diverse cultural backgrounds who speak multiple languages. For example, could multilingual groups with interpreter support still preserve the trust and connection that make this work effective? Innovation in this context is ongoing. It is about continuously learning, adapting, and staying responsive to the needs of the clients we serve. In summary, our stress management group represents an innovative approach because it is client-centered, it is culturally responsive, present-focused, and grounded in what our clients tell us. That works.
Thank you so much, Martin and Marielle, for your presentation. I think we have, we can dedicate 5 minutes to questions. I know some of you had saved them for now. Some others are have accumulated in the chat. So maybe I can take one of the questions that are that want to speak on the mic. Otherwise, I'll go to the ones in the chat. Again, we have five good minutes for questions, so or comments. Otherwise, I'll read some of them in the chat. No questions now? Well, Rania was asking in the chat from Rania's from Nebras Center in Tunisia. She was asking whether you used EMDR therapy in these cases, and I think that was referring to Georgina's presentation.
No, there was no EMDR in our
no MDR. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right. I'm trying to skim here through the. Mary, she's asking, in cases of SGBV, how would the approach be for LGBTQ plus for group therapy? I'm not sure whether this is specifically for Georgina, but I guess the same approach would be able to be implemented, right, for LGBT plus LGBTQ plus individuals, Georgina? I mean, it's the same group therapy modality.
Yes, I would believe so. So this was not a new intervention. We chose an intervention that's manualized and has been implemented many times before, and it's got a growing evidence base. It's been used with many different groups. It came up in our scoping review because it had been used. There was a case study of it being used with a refugee woman who'd had a traumatic migration experience and domestic violence and abuse. So that's why it came within the choices that we were deciding among, but it's been applied very broadly. It was just in our research study, we had this specific target group of women with that dual experience of traumatic migration and domestic violence and abuse. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Georgina. And well, if there are no more questions, I mean, I see a lot of demands for sharing the material and studies and the links. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to collect them and send them through with the email that we sent after the webinar. We're also going to be uploading it into the platform and hopefully be able to share the presentations of today if there's consent. There's a last comment from our colleague Henok. Henok, do you want to go on mic? Then, they hear another voice than mine.
Hi, yeah, this is Henok. So I used to run also group therapy on a clinical way. So it's very interesting to hear how that play out in different places. But my question is regarding to how group therapy could be also a way of connecting people beside, the problem, but also to find a solution for themselves. For example, in the absence of the organization or the therapist or a counselor, how they can sustain themselves. So is there any way attempt to support that? And also, if like your clients speak different language, how do you facilitate that meeting? Because I see sometimes that can create kind of confusion, misunderstanding within the group. And I don't know how do you deal with that, and any suggestion, that would be great.
I can reflect. Oh, I can hear myself.
Try now. Oh. All right. Now, I think.
Now? Yeah,
yes,
that's better. So I can reflect a little on that. So in the STAIR group, the groups were organized by language. So that was something that was possible. In this setting, there were enough women that shared the same language to be able to have a group together. In other studies that I've been involved in, that hasn't always been possible. So there's been group trauma sessions where there's been multiple languages, but and that has, of course, affected the complexity and the pacing of the sessions. So I don't think that's ideal. In terms of, if I understood correctly, Henrik, you were asking about whether there's efforts made for the group to stay in touch beyond the scheduled sessions. Is that what you meant? Yeah, so I don't think that was the case. I can hear myself again. I don't think that was the case in the Red Cross. I don't think they facilitated that continued connection, but in my other project I'm referring to, that did. So these were young people, young refugees who'd experienced symptoms of post-traumatic stress, and then the facilitator asked if they wanted to keep in touch and helped facilitate that contact so they could keep in touch going forward. So I think it's done differently in different places, but I know the social aspect is highly valued. That's why our survivor collaborators encouraged us to look at group interventions. So the social aspect is part of the healing, I think. It's a very interesting question.
Thank you so much, Georgina and Henrik, for the question. So with this, we reached the end of the session today. Now you're gonna get on the screen a short poll. Well, three quick questions that you can answer yes or no to. Very easy, but also very useful for us to know if these spaces are meaningful. And with that, I would like to thank a lot the speakers today, Alexandra, Georgina, Marielle, and Martin, for your time and for wanting to share your experiences with us. As I said, we're going to try to compile all the resources and material studies that were shared today to be able to share it with all of you. And yeah, with that, I would like to also thank the interpreters, and just to mention the next session, the next webinar is going to be on the 13th of May. So almost within, to mention that it's going to be at 9 a.m. this time. It's going to be at 9 a.m. Central European time, which is going to make it easier for some other colleagues in other regions to join. And yeah, I think with that, we hope to see you all on the 13th of May. Don't miss us too much. And if you miss each other, then make sure you write to each other and we keep connected. And without any further notice, I'm just gonna say goodbye for now and see you on the 13th of May.
Bye, everyone. Excellent work.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you all. Ciao, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.